10:45. You guys ready to roll? All right. All right. Let's do it. Make sure these are all live. All right. Can you guys hear me? Awesome. Okay. Welcome to this workshop. Today, what we're going to discuss with our panel is how to help your franchisees build dream teams of employees for the operations. And I want to start by going down the panel with introductions, a little bit of their background, and we'll just get right into it. So I'll start with Rob.
Good morning. It's still morning, right?
It is.
10:45, still technically morning. So I'm Rob Flanagan. I'm the CEO of Houndstown USA. We're a doggy daycare and boarding concept. I've been in franchising over 20 years. And it really is just an absolute honor and privilege to be up here. I have such a passion for helping franchisees hire and manage their own teams and how do they develop those team members, but really focusing on how to lean into the upcoming generation. And I'm excited for the next 45 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you. My name is Hao Lam.
Can anyone hear?
Yeah. Is it on? Yeah. Oh, my name is Hao Lam, CEO and founder of Best in Class. Yeah, I'm talking. Best in Class Education. I've been on both sides of the table. So I was a Z for 15 years and a franchisor for 13. We had 40 plus locations in 9 states. We ran 10, 11 corporate locations before. Also author of the book. It's such an honor to be here, and I would hope to share some experience with this group. Thank you.
Hey, the
Now it's
mics
working.
probably work now. Yeah, there we go. Hi, my name's Justin Sloan. I run a holding company that started investing in real estate, and then we also invest in companies, and now that's turned into also investing into franchises. We are the area representative in Texas for a company called Everbowl. It's an acai bowl concept, so we own 10 restaurants and then also have a bunch of franchisees under us and help them build their teams. So, yeah.
Awesome. And I'm Charles Kaiser. I'm a franchisee. Been doing this for 17, 18 years now. Got Sport Clips, men's haircutting, OxyFresh carpet cleaning, and just a couple years ago, got rid of our legacy brand, sold it out for Little Caesars, and have been Valpak franchisee as well in the past. Today, this topic is something that is always asked, and a lot of times it's asked, how do you find great people? And we're going to kind of dive into that. Our first question will be kind of high level, but my commitment to you today is that through our conversation, and I'll try to wrap it up at the end with bullet points, I'd like to try to do the best we can to give real actionable items for everyone to go back with to do something rather than just merely concepts. So the first question will be high level, talking about from a franchisor's perspective, what are you doing to support your franchisees with recruitment? So this will be a pretty large blanket conversation we're having, and then we'll drill into it more. So I'd like to give all three a chance to speak. For a start, we can start with Rob.
So what we do at Houndstown is we absolutely make it a priority as one of our initiatives with our franchisees is leaning into training. So when it comes to training our franchisees on how to hire, how to build their own teams, we first start with training them on what I mentioned before was how do you lean into this upcoming generation? There's kind of what I would say a myth out there that this generation, that's the younger generation coming up, is lazy, and we absolutely do not believe that that is the case. They just came up in a different environment with different learnings and different access to technology, and we actually train them on how to communicate to this generation. Where do you find them, and how do you train this generation? We also really help our franchisees and train them on how to build their own culture. It's a very robust training program. It's a 5-step process where we help franchisees find their mission statements, their values. How do they build the culture that they want? Because you will have a culture by accident or on purpose. And we also really, and I think this is important for any of the younger emerging brands in here, joint employer is absolutely a thing. But I find a lot of brands get afraid to lean into helping their franchisees with their team because they don't want to touch joint employer. You can absolutely help your franchisees. You just can't dictate and mandate what they do, but you can absolutely help them, and we really lean into that.
Thank you. I echo a lot of things Rob said. We build SOPs. We have interviewing question and all that. And very importantly, before they even buy, we let them know R&R is very important, right? Recruitment and retention, because we're in education, right? Teacher is very important, recruit and retention, and then student also recruit and retention. So we always go out and hire, even if we have enough staff, we always overhire 10, 20% just in case, because most of the positions are part-time. Why money is important, but it's not the most important thing. It's making an impact. Let them know why we do what we do. Like Simon Sinek said, people don't buy what you do, but they buy why you do it. Why do they want to be a teacher? So it's very important because hiring is very costly, training is very costly, retention is very important. So when we hire someone, we have the end in mind. How long are you going to stay with us? We have a lot of university students working for us, but when they graduate, they're going to leave. We know that they're going to be here until they graduate. So we like to hire freshmen, second year, third year students, knowing that they're going to be with us for 2-3 years at the most. And then we train them, we help them, get to where they want to be.
I look at training them to find employees as much as training them on a recipe. And when people are buying into a franchise, they're buying all of your systems. So give them everything that you have that you've used to find employees for your corporate stores, whether that's job descriptions, recommendations of websites, processes, hiring personalities, whatever your toolbox is, just share it with your franchisees, because ultimately you want them to be able to duplicate what you've been able to do at your corporate stores, and the more successful they are. One thing that was really big for me with Everbowl was they had already a very established set of core values. And we actually use that as we go through Discovery Day and FDD reviews. And they have 5 core values. We don't have to go through them, but we use that as part of the onboarding, as part of the training, as part of the process. And then we actually use it through coaching. Hey, here's how we need to go out in the community and make some more friends. Here's how we need to do this. And I think it's important that you give them that core values, because like you said, either it's going to happen on purpose or on accident. You're going to have a culture, but the more that it can be driven from a corporate level and then repeated, I think that just makes life a lot easier, and repeatability is everything in this industry.
Awesome. And, you just kind of touched on the next question, but to drill down more into that question I've got to the panel, does the franchisor culture, can it affect or make an impact on the hiring at the unit level? So if it's a restaurant that for the frontline worker or whatever concept it is, can the culture in the franchisor's room, can it affect all the way down to the unit?
I 1,000% agree. Yeah, I could see how maybe some people may see that a little bit differently, but I think everything is driven by your culture. Absolutely everything. And that starts at the franchisor level, and it starts with your team, your field reps, your leadership team, everybody. I've seen amazing cultures that aren't necessarily strong on the mission and the value statements, but they just have that strong culture. And I've seen companies with mission statements and values, and the culture isn't great. But that will cascade down to your franchisees, which then cascades down to how they hire. What you will discover is that with technology today, when people are looking for a job, they're getting on Reddit, they're getting on Glassdoor, and you will see maybe a franchise location that hasn't done a great job with their hiring and their culture, but that ends up reflecting on the entire brand. And so I think all that absolutely cascades down. I think it's also important to kind of see is, as a franchisor, if you're trying to train your franchisees on how to hire and how to manage their teams and keep turnover down, but as a franchisor, if you have a ton of turnover on the franchisor side, if you don't have a great culture on the franchisor side, you're not walking the talk. And so you absolutely have to look in the mirror and make sure that as a franchisor, you're modeling what all this looks like so your franchisees can see what that looks like.
Yeah, exactly. I think the core value, the culture is from the top down. We repeat it every week. We have weekly meeting. Before we started, we go over our core value. And then same thing, when we interview applicant, we run by this and ask them to give us example. Do you think you can live by our core value? And then for the franchisee, for the employee meeting, they do the same thing. Every month they award employee and point out, thank you so much because you are positive, you're energetic and all that. We always repeat that. Every single meeting, we talk about our core value. And during the pandemic, we made a change because one of our core values is efficient, but in the pandemic, you can't be efficient. It's hard. So we keep the letter E, but it's empathetic instead, right? It's the mental. It's super important that we need to understand where they're coming from and all this stuff. And then now, post-pandemic, we move it back to efficient. We need to be efficient. We need to look at every single line item in detail, and then KPI and all this stuff. So every level know our culture, core value, and everybody's marching in the same direction.
I think it's important to go through a small list of why do people want to work for you. Is it just pay? Is it work-life balance? Is it this? Is it that? But being part of something is a really important item in there. And I think that more now than ever, it's not just how much they're going to get paid, but it's also, are they going to be part of something, and making sure that you really clearly show them what they're part of. And then give them a path to be able to progress through that journey that they're going on as well. So I think having that really set core value will end up being a reason that you attract and maintain a lot more people. That's all there is to it.
Great answers. And I think that's action item number one. Go back and be intentional about the culture that you have as a franchisor and how that can get all the way down to the unit level for hiring. I think that's huge. My next question comes down to identifying the employee that best fits the brand. How do you, is there any support or anything that's done from the franchisor's level to help the franchisee identify who that right candidate is to help lift the brand?
So we with that question, we absolutely lean into that just as much. You can kind of look at it, what we do. It's a scaled down version, but the same way when we're recruiting in franchise development, trying to find the right franchisee for our brand and using different personality surveys, DISC. There's a ton out there. They're very inexpensive. We've used that same platform with our employees. Again, it's not a 1 + 1 = 2. It's not a, I don't want any of my franchisees to 100% follow that, but it really helps them understand the type of employee. And by using that really, really inexpensive psychological survey, you can really weed out people who just aren't going to be the right fit for our brand. We're with dogs all day long. There's certainly a customer service approach to it, but it's definitely a specific type of person excels in our brand versus maybe in some other brands.
For us, it's a couple of things. We're looking for someone who's very passionate about education and be able to teach several people in a small mini classroom setting. It's not a one-on-one. Someone is very passionate, but it's one-on-one, not following the system is not gonna work. And then we train our franchisee and we share with them what is the most important KPI, and then let the teacher know. For example, one of our most important KPI is teacher to student ratio. The only way we make money is you have enough student in each class. If you have empty seat, you're not making money. So everybody know that, and make sure the teacher, we train them to be able to handle a healthy class of students. You don't want to be too many, you don't want to be too little. Train them how to be able to manage the classroom, make a difference.
I think it's a fine line, right, between giving them and telling them this is the exact person that you need to hire, and all of a sudden they're like, you told me to hire that type of person, now this is going wrong. Or you give them all the tools and they hire somebody the complete opposite of that anyways, and there's not much that you can do, right? So I think the best thing that you can do is just continually educate, hit on the points that really matter for the business. Here's a few key personality types. If somebody is going into a job where they're going to do the same things every day for the next 4 years, you're not going to want someone with a huge growth mindset that wants to shiny light syndrome, let's go build new stuff, all this, right? And so just kind of giving them those simple lanes to stay on, I think is going to be better than overstepping too much and even helping them pick specific employees, because let's be real, they're the ones that have to deal with that every single day, and you don't want to get too mixed in with that relationship. So walk the line as much as you can, but just continually educate. Show them what you're doing that's working, the changes in job descriptions, where you're finding people, the personality tests, and then hopefully they, or they learn the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
A tactic to share, we train our franchisees, when it comes to hiring for your team, you're either fishing or you're hunting. And fishing is you're just sitting there in your business and you're just waiting for that person to come in and turning in an application. That's a really hard way to build a team nowadays. So a thing that we've done that's very, very, it's an amazing best practice. A lot of our employees are high school, early college. So we partner with schools. So we train our franchisees to go to high schools and go to community colleges and colleges, find the DECA teacher, find the theater teacher. Theater kids are awesome. Mm-hmm. They're a little ADD. I'm a previous theater kid, so I can say that, but they're outgoing. They're great at customer service. And then as that franchise owner, partner with that theater class, sponsor the play, sponsor the DECA class. And then those teachers are going to start send that franchisee team, hey, this kid is great. They got good grades, they show up on time. And then that's a great way to kind of have a door of employees coming in by hunting versus just sitting back and waiting for somebody to come in.
Awesome. Yeah, I got my mic.
You got your own mic.
Yeah, and I'll weigh in on this from a franchisee's perspective. It took a few years to figure this out, but obviously when assessing a brand that we want to get into, you look at the ROI, you look at all that stuff, but then you look at who's that model customer, who is it that you're going for in that business, and it wasn't but last 10 years that we started putting that same effort and focus on who's that model employee for that business. So if you're always trying to figure out who your customer is, and you really need to figure out who your employee is. And I'll give you an example. I didn't even talk about, we just recently had sold our med spas. And so we had registered nurse that were working for us. Underneath that same certification, you have very different individuals. You have registered nurses that love the adrenaline of the emergency room, to have that hit of dopamine that, they've got a crisis going on. That individual doesn't thrive in the med spa business, and vice versa. The person that's in that med spa business gets burnt out when they're in the emergency room with all that high energy going on. And so that's an example, not saying there couldn't be some crossover, but generally speaking, those are things we look for. Another brand that we have, men's Sport Clips Men's Haircutting, that again is a cosmetology license. But a cosmetologist that has passion about doing color clearly isn't going to enjoy working in our brand because it's overwhelmingly majority men's haircuts. And so just identifying that employee. So we're looking at additional brands to add on. And as we look at those brands, that's a huge component, is what does that employee look like? Because to your point, fishing or hunting, you know, what you hunt for is what you get. I'm sure everyone's heard that saying before. And so it's always nice to know what you're hunting for. And if you're hunting for that, you have a lot of success. And you're just putting that model employee in an environment that they're going to thrive. And that leads to a lot of development and leadership that can push them to the next level to grow, to ultimately help you grow your business. So, awesome answers. My next question is, because I think in our organizations, we have good people. You know, as I said in the very beginning, the question always is like, what's the secret sauce? Where do you find the great people? And the truth of it is, I think an awful lot of them are developed and built within inside the organization. So if I could ever so graciously put a grade level on an employee, and let's say that you've got B-level employees, how do you turn those B-level employees into A employees inside your organizations?
So you're going to notice a theme from anything I say here. It is when you think you're training your franchisees well, you probably still need to do it 80% more. Training is a foundation of everything within franchising and how all that works. So within this component of training a franchisee, we put up a quadrant, and what we show is like you may have an employee who is low on values, low on skills. This is an employee you probably want to move on from your organization. But if they're really living the values of your business, but they don't have those skills, lean into development. Lean into turning that B employee into that A employee. Those can end up being some of your most powerful employees as a franchise owner. So, but we want to break that down with our franchisees, not from a philosophical perspective. We want to break it down into tactics so that, because often franchisees have never managed a team before, or if they have managed a team, it's been adults, people who have mortgages, they have families. And when you're managing a younger generation, it's a completely different leadership style. And often franchisees need very tactical approaches, not the philosophy.
Similarly, we use an EOS concept called GWC. Do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do the job? So we constantly review them. Like, they get it, they want it, but they can't teach high-level math. We have to move them in different classroom. And one little thing I want to share about retention, like in Best in Class, we share with our franchises like little thing very often. When I was running 10, 11 location, I always go to Costco and buy a lot of movie tickets, Starbucks card. Everybody have a job well done. You just thank them, give them 2 movie tickets. Every little thing goes a long way, and gamify the concept. And sometimes we say, if we get 10 Google review this week, everybody get Starbucks coffee, and they just love it. You gamified it, and a little thing more than just work. It is really fun. Pizza night. One of our franchisee, every Saturday he buy lunch for everybody, and people look forward to that because like he tried different restaurant every week and ask the employee, what do you want to eat this week? What do you want to eat next week? And it is just it is really fun. It's not just a lunch, but it create a unity in the community.
I mean, I think Chick-fil-A says it best that they're a leadership company that also sells chicken, right? And they understand the importance of the better you make the people, the more business that you do. It's like it shouldn't be a surprise when you've got amazing people and they do amazing things. And so I think it's not just about moving the B's up to A's, but the D's to C's and the C's to B's and everybody at all times. And then doing the fun stuff, right? So like at our restaurants, we've got these little fruit characters, like a little acai guy, a little blueberry guy, and like created pins for the employees' hats. So when they hit a year, 2 years, 3 years, and those little things, like to me, it's like it's a $3 pin to them, it's like we had one employee who's like, what's the 80-year pin? It's like, okay, hold on, I don't think there's that many fruits. But it's this idea that like these little tiny actions are moving people through a pipeline, and no matter what, if you have the mentality of I want whoever works for me to be better off when they leave here, then they'll also make your business better off when it leaves there. And so I think you have to focus on the people and make sure that's a big part of the company, and how to make them better and how to make them better for your guests. And then, we've all seen our locations as well that have one or two bad employees, and you watch sales drop 30%. And you can also get a good employee in there and watch sales grow 30%. So spend time on not having option A.
Excellent. So from a franchisee's perspective, there's training manuals, op manuals for all the brands. There should be anyway. And I'm going to talk specifically about brick and mortar concepts when I make this statement. The gap that I think is still there between franchisor and franchisees, and I see this as I speak to my colleagues and other franchisees of other brands as well. If I was to distill it down, what is it that kind of makes that franchisee scalable? How they can grow? It's the area manager or district manager. And there's typically not a playbook that's provided from the franchisor on that. So it's really reliant generally on the franchisee to figure that part out. And I think that is the takeaway from this section of, being able to help develop that, because that's where, from sessions earlier yesterday, we were talking about science and art. That really kind of leans into the art side. Because a lot of times metrics and KPIs for those area managers aren't really put into place, and it's just the franchisee tries to figure it out step by step, if that makes sense. Does anyone want to talk about things that they've done with breakthroughs at that level of area managers for those franchisees?
Yeah, I'll go. You nailed it. As a franchisor and hearing a franchisee saying that, I think a lot of franchises do a great job, or should be doing a great job, of training the franchisee. But when you start getting into multi-unit management and district, and you're looking at district managers, it's a completely different avenue, and it's a different type of franchisee. It's a different type of hiring. It's a different type of training. We lean also into that type of training, and we use that in terms of, we have system-wide webinars. We lean on our franchisees who have been open longer, and they help their fellow franchisees with a lot of those best practices and training. End of the day, franchisees will always listen to a fellow franchisee more than they're going to listen to my dumb face saying the same thing. The other part on that we also, how many franchisors in here have corporate stores? Just a quick raise of hands.
I think that's
awesome.
Yeah.
Good.
I think as a franchisor, you should have, if you only have one, you should have maybe as part of a 3-year, 5-year plan to have more. Franchisees know when you're just up here talking from an ivory tower, but you don't really, you're just giving them book learning, but you're not in the business. At Houndstown, we require everybody on our team has to work in our corporate stores every month, a couple of shifts. Everybody, from finance to marketing to operations to myself. Because if you don't really know what the franchisee is dealing with from a district manager level or down to just a unit level, the franchisees know immediately. They'll be respectful, but they're going to go look to get answers somewhere else.
Yeah, franchisee actually look at the ZOR, right? They copy everything what you do. I want to share a couple of things that we did when I had 10 locations. We had about 65 to 85 teachers. So every quarter, we have a corporate office. We had a commercial kitchen. We called it a chef lamb day. My wife and I went there and then cooked lunch for everybody, just the two of us. We spent 4 hours prepping, and we cooked 65, lunches for everybody. They love it. They look forward to come and enjoy. And then second thing that I did is munch with Hao. So I make it super easy. Munch is like monthly lunch. So 4 people can come at lunch with me. We pick a restaurant within 1.5 miles of the company. Anybody can pick a restaurant. I show up. I sit down, spend an hour, 90 minutes with them. Every month, people just fighting for the slot, and I have an opportunity to sit down with 3 or 4 people every month and just talk about family and all this stuff. This is like outside work time, and I find it very, very impactful.
I just give everybody access to my entire toolbox. So if you want to, spend the day with one of my multi-family or multi-unit leaders, great. If you want to hop on with my accountant for a couple hours, great. Whatever you want to do. And, as you grow, I think early on, it's just the right thing to do, right? The more successful that they have, the more that you can rub off on them, then great. And as you get to scale, then, usually in the FTDs is costs for that training, right? If somebody brings in a new leader, a new multi-unit, whatever it is, and wants to send them to you for half a week or whatever, then obviously there's costs that go with it. But early on, just let them hang around you. Like, just let them be part of it. Let them see what you're doing. Let them see what's working. And only good things come from that. And then maybe you could learn from each other.
Excellent. Yeah. Okay.
I'm from the American Press Academy, and we have a 10-week professional program on district managers, and it's based on experience, tactical and practical. So if anyone wants to know about professional training for district managers,
Cool.
We have put our managers through this program, and it's very good.
Nice.
This wasn't a setup, by the way. It wasn't.
20% commission.
100%.
say it again, the name of the program. It's a multi-unit leadership certification, so if you want information, just come to me. I'm an operator, so it's tactical practical.
The next topic I'm going to move to is going to be about compensation. But prior to that, are there any questions on the topics we've talked about so far? No. Yes, sir.
For the training, Zor and Z's, when Z's are hiring people, how much do you get involved from the Zor side? So we're already providing it through digital or getting them to come to your corporate. And then the second question I have, if I can, if franchisee is hiring a bad employee and you know it will be a bad employee, but they for some reason could be nephew or something, do you, and not for basic stuff, but managerial stuff, do you get involved and say, sorry, man?
You legally can't.
Correct.
So this is what I was referencing, and just for anybody, and I'm going to be very, very high level on it. Joint employer is a thing. They are running their own business. I, as a franchisor, you should have what's called a brand standards manual or an operations manual. And in a nutshell, here are our standards. You, as a franchisee, have to hit the standard. Here are best practices on how you can get there, but I can't dictate how you get there. So technically, if I walk into one of my franchisee store and an employee is doing, let's just say, not cleaning well or doing something, I can go address that with the franchisee or maybe the designated manager, but I can't go as a franchisor and tell the franchisee to fire that person. I can just dictate the standard. So if you're just starting out in franchising, you will hear joint employer air all the time. I've been hearing it for 20 years. It is a thing to be aware of, but I always tell folks, don't be afraid of it, but you really want to be specific so you don't accidentally overstep. I walked into a franchisee location one time, and one of their employees was just so drunk, and he was passed out. And I'm like, how do I handle this? Yeah, no drunk people, and look, and there's a little bit of gray. I handled that. This is a clear problem. Was I technically overstepping? Probably, but this was a clear violation of, I don't care what, something.
Yeah, if they're not doing the correct brand actions, then you just give them corrective actions that they need to fix for their location. And if that means that they need to find new people who can, help achieve those brand actions, then that might be best for them. Otherwise, if they continue to go down the corrective action path, they can literally lose the location because they're choosing to pick that employee that's not doing the correct items. But you have to protect your brand. That's why this is all there. You just can't do it through reprimanding or making employee decisions. You can do it by holding them to the brand standards.
Good question. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Phil. And I'm going to shamelessly be stealing this from one of my franchisees, but when I was the CMO at Zaxby's,
Yeah.
Chain out of South. I had one franchisee who had the absolute best crew. Every restaurant he took over, he could double sales in a really short period of time. And I said, how, and nobody would leave. It was like Hotel California, nobody ever left. And I was like, what do you do? And he said, very simple. Every year when I do my annual planning, he said, I'll take each store and I'll say, all right, I need this store to be up 10%. And any dollar over that 10% goes to the manager, 10% split with the crew. And so he said, because I don't care. He said, I've already hit my goal. And he said, I still get 80% of the bid, right? Anything
Yeah.
over that. And so, and it pays quarterly, right? And so suddenly all the employees are watching waste and they're making sure they're doing add-on sales because they know they get 10% of anything over the goal. And I so shamelessly stole that and taken it to other brands, but he was just a brilliant franchisee.
I think
Great
that
best practice.
is awesome. Yeah. If there's no other questions, that's like a perfect segue into the next topic. I appreciate it, man. And where does money fit in? You know, I think for all of us, the holy grail is to create a compensation plan that dictates the behavior that we're exactly looking for, right? And it's not easy always. I'd love to hear. I appreciate that. That was awesome. Is there anything in your guys' compensation plan, or have you changed it because you weren't getting it to connect with the behavior that you're trying to have as the outcome? And anything related to compensation this is not really a discussion about pay them X amount, higher than someone else as a competitor, because that's a rat race at some point. And I'm looking for basically, details of compensation plans that have seemed to work for you. And I'd open that up to the crowd afterwards if there's anyone that has great ideas on compensation.
Yeah, some of these have been shared. These are all part of our best practices, different webinars we do with franchisees. I love that story. There's lots of those.
Yeah.
We really train our franchisees. Again, we can't dictate what they pay, but we're very, very clear that people want to enjoy and be part of something larger than themselves, and they are happy to be in an amazing place of work, even if they could go get $2 more at a McDonald's. I'm not knocking McDonald's, but you always see the signs out there. And we have a huge list of these different best practices. I love like the gift cards. We do something very similar to that. $10. I mean, when I was coming up, it was $5. Now it may need to be 10. I'm
25.
dating myself. But these are great best practices. SPIF programs. We train our franchisees when you're doing some type of SPIF or bonus. Do it as a team. Don't do it to the individual. All these different best practices go a really long way to help your team members, your franchisees' team members, feel very well compensated, but you don't have to break the labor bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did something at the store level for membership. So for example, it's critically important for us to have new student. So some of the franchisee, we charge, let's say, $25 to $50 per student. Some of the franchisee put it in a pool and use that for Starbucks money or something like that. And then some of them have open book management with store manager, similar to your concept. This is what we have, and anything over, and then they give a little bit to the manager, and then have a party for the staff and all that, right? So many of our franchisee, show their book to the store manager so that they know, because if you hide it and then you're driving a Tesla, they might think you make a lot of money. They don't know that you barely break even.
I think it's important to understand what makes the employee tick. Somebody that runs most of my operations, he thrives more on people development than he does on money. So as long as he's making good money and doesn't have to, go to bed at night worrying about that, then he really gets driven off of creating new programs and, finding ways to grow people and stuff like that. So I think that it's important to have comp plans that work with the people, and maybe time for him and his family is more important than certain other things. But in my opinion, I want to build a business that's so big that lots of people can be part of it, and ownership through ghost equity that converts in different things and stuff like that. And the more that you can make people part of what you're building, like who cares if, do you want to own all of a grape or part of a watermelon? And I think that if you build a company so big that everyone else gets to win with it too, all of a sudden now you're all in a big rocket ship that's going the same direction, and it allows you to attract some pretty cool talent too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, one thing to piggyback what Justin said, because every manager, store manager is different. Someone more family time, someone more money. Golden handcuff, it doesn't fit, every individual, right? Depending on what they want, someone professional development, and then we help them. A lot of the time, they just want to be with us for a certain year. We actually have someone, we pay someone to spend 10 hours with the person to help them get their next job. And they talk about us all the time.
I share this story with all my franchisees. Another best practice is to train your franchisees on is like, how are you onboarding your team members? And then if a team member is moving on in a positive way, how are you honoring them? And I really saw this done amazingly well. I walked into an Apple store and everybody started cheering. And I'm kind of arrogant, and I thought they were cheering because I walked in, I was like, oh, that makes sense. But really what Apple was doing, it was a team member's last day, and as he was walking out, they stopped everything that they were doing, and they cheered and clapped for 1 minute. And it seems really small, but this, I got whatever I needed from Apple, and I'm walking through the mall, and there was a Microsoft store, and nobody was in the Microsoft store, but the Apple store was packed. And it just speaks to culture. It speaks to how you take care of your team members. And those are very easy things for franchisees to do that don't cost any money. And they go a really long way towards them building their teams.
Those are great stories. For us, and as a franchisee, I'll give an example for our OxyFresh carpet cleaning. We've got a compensation model that is a commission-based. And to me, that was amazing eye opener because when we put that in place for the residential, we taught it from a perspective of customer service first, and that you had a professional responsibility towards the customer to really diagnose what's going on inside the home and be able to offer additional items that were truly going to complete the experience of the cleaning. And what was amazing was, we found, and it's still this way today, everyone has that attention, and that's the first thing that they think about. So this compensation has created that behavior to where the customer's first. But then, if I'm ever in the office, sometimes I'll have a technician walk by and just say, hey, I struggled on, getting the customer to understand that this was important on this last, yesterday. Can you give me some advice? Because they really needed it, the pet extraction, for example. And so it's where someone will self-develop, self-improve because they've got that compensation that they get a direct cut of. And it was amazing coming from restaurants where you got to be a little bit more creative, like what you're talking about with Zaxby's. It was just a really eye-opener for me to have that kind of plan and how that dictated that behavior. I think we've talked about it a little bit up here, but if you guys want to go more in depth, perks, anything that's out there that would be tiebacks to, that would be awesome for the employees. I like that Apple story, actually. It was really good. But anything that you guys are doing inside your organizations that are perks. I know, Justin, you spoke about it last time we talked with the pins.
Yeah, I kind of mentioned them, but so
Yeah.
annual pins, and then when they get to 5 years, they'll get a plaque that then they can take those pins and put them on, little things like that. But everything from a day off randomly to lunch being, anything like that, everything matters so much. I love the Apple story, and I think that it's really just the mentality of we work for our employees as much as they work for us, so we have to have that kind of, we have to make them as good as they can possibly be. And if they end up leaving or they end up going to a competitor, it is what it is, but what happens if they're awful and they stay with you? And so I would just so much rather make everybody great, and if they leave to another company, it happens. But what happens, honestly, is they end up staying and they refer other people. And, we've had entire locations where, they're going off to college and they'll find the replacement staff for them just because they want to make sure that that location's in the same good hands that they had it. And, when you can create that, that kind of relationship where you take care of each other, it can really help grow it.
That's awesome.
One example I want to share, when I ran multi-unit, when I had 10, 11 location, at every store, we put aside $100 a month. It was like 10 years ago. My wife had this idea. Why don't we do an annual retreat? Where's the money, right? It's like back then, it is 3 or 4 days. We did cruise, we did Hawaii, we did Mexico and all that. So putting away $100 a month, you don't really feel it. So we'll put in the bank, and then this is a budget. So we brought all the manager every single year. They look forward to it, right? So because we only teach 12 weeks a quarter, so we find a week off. If you don't want to go, it's okay. You don't get the money, but you get that 3 or 4 days off. And then every year they decide where to go and how to spend the money and all the stuff. And then almost every single one of them bring their family, but they pay for their family. And then it become an annual thing for Best in Class. And then they talk about it. Even if they leave Best in Class, they keep talking about, oh, can I join your company? I just want to do the trip. So this is really, really impactful for us.
That's awesome.
So yeah, we have a couple. I mean, so one thing on the franchisor side, for the franchisee, we make it as easy and economical as possible for a franchisee to have their team members come to our annual conferences and any training that we do. I sometimes will see, oh, I would bring my manager, but I got to pay this registration fee, all those different things. We make it as cheap as possible for a franchisee to bring their team to our conferences because we believe there's tremendous value there. On the second part are just different things that we do. This is more on the franchisor side. It may not apply to the franchisee. So when we set our culture at Houndstown, what we say is if you join Houndstown, you're a townie for life. And our goal is that every team member that works at Houndstown on kind of the corporate side, when they retire, we want them to look back at their career and say, Houndstown was the best place I ever worked. That is our goal. That is what we drive towards. And then all of our different tactics that we do are all trying to drive that mission, that we want the team members that work here to say that was the best place I worked. A thing that we do, it's different. It's not for everybody. Been doing this a while, and I've been in an environment where I turn in like a 4-week notice and I get a happy hour. But I would see like another team member who got fired for cause get a severance package. And I'm like, well, this doesn't make sense. This seems out of balance. So what we do with team members that move on, maybe to another job or a promotion somewhere else, we budget into our annual budget that if that were to happen, we give them what would be an equal severance. It's just a way to help them launch into their next seat. And how they exit out, we have a big party. We do a whole bunch of things to like honor them. And these things are really powerful. It's not that expensive. And because our turnover is very, very low, I rarely am paying out that amount.
I just want to comment on one thing that he said earlier, which was when he's looking at brands and different things, he's looking, or it was you, sorry, Charles, that said you're looking at brands where you can find employees easily or more easily, right? Not super high skilled or not like, and I think that's really important that franchisors provide a concept that you can easily hire for, and that people are actively looking for businesses that they are going to be able to attract people easily with. You know, I'm in the acai bowl space, so guess what? Every 17 to 21-year-old, they're off at 8 o'clock every night, and they don't have to have fryers, and it's a fun environment, and all that kind of stuff. We have no problem filling it, and that was very attractive to me. Yeah. Whereas if it's like you're open till 2 in the morning, and it's really, and all this kind of stuff, now you have to go find a completely different clientele. And so the more that franchisors can provide a system and a great way of attracting fun employees, it will actually help you attract great franchisees as well.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Hey, sorry, you said something earlier. We did an interview with our crew, and we got back, 1,100 responses, and the question to them was, as a franchisor, what can we do to make your life better? And I expected it to be money, right? And the top answer, which was absolutely blew me away, was free Spotify. We didn't pay for my Spotify. And number 2 was access to pet insurance. And so on their 3-month anniversary,
Yeah.
It was Voodoo, the TV subscription thing.
Yeah.
I called Voodoo and they said, here's what we all your employees for free, that's fine. Because I mean, they make money if you do the things.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so talk to your crew and really say like, what matters to you, what can we do to make your life better, and I think you'll be surprised by the answer.
Oh yeah, the amount of people that get 50 cents or $1 an hour raises when one thing of $20 a month would mean twice to 10 times as much on those kind of things, but you never know if you don't ask them. Completely agree.
Love the pet insurance.
That is a good idea.
And I again, best practices, do some sort of survey with your team. Franchisees can do that very cheaply. I mean, you could get a form off of internet and just put in Microsoft Forms or Google form. It's a great way to get feedback. On the franchisor side, shameless shout out, we use Franchise Business Review to get a really robust, data-driven report back on our team. I think our culture's good, but we got some feedback on certain things that I thought was pretty good, but team members like, no, we're not real stoked about that. And that was but I don't think I ever would have gotten that feedback if I hadn't used that survey platform.
Awesome. I think we got time for one more question. Yes, ma'am?
Hi, so we have a similar concept to the sports club for full service small franchise. And traditionally in the cosmetology world, stylists get paid commission. We pay our stylists hourly. We have memberships, packages, and the whole upselling culture is obviously, of course. But what are some ways that you motivate or incentivize your sports club staff to upsell and sell those memberships and packages other than like doing gift cards?
Yeah, so it's really how our compensation plan is designed, and I've got my partner Jesse in the room. I'll let him speak to it. He deals with the operation side of that, but
We have the service commission and the retail side.
yeah,
They have an hourly base pay, but once they get a certain product, they also get service commission. So that's when they're doing upgrades for shampoo, things like that. We don't do any color service, but they get up to 20% of retail.
so we also.
Right now, it's like probably
Yeah, and that's also that compensation plan's tied into a net promoter score that we use, Listen 360, and there's a direct correlation to providing that additional add-on service. It's great customer service. It translates into the net promoter score, how happy that customer is leaving, and so those two things work great because we've got a culture where the employees are wanting to make money, but they also want to do the best job they can and provide the best service. So those two things play off each other, and that's what we use to drive it home. Yeah, good question. Well, if there's no others, then I'd like to thank our panelists for being up here to take their time to share what they've got, and our fourth panelist, Joel, who jumped in there. We appreciate it. So, thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good to meet you. Yeah.